is Derek, and recently Joe the Plumber, who had his few moments of fame in the 2008 presidential campaign, has decided to run for Congress and released a 45-second video. And my friend Victor asked for a rebuttal of that video because there seemed to be some falsehoods being spread by Joe the Plumber. And so that's what this video is about. This is my rebuttal to Joe the Plumber. And he seems to have taken a page from the Nazi propaganda manual, which says keep the lies short and repeat them as often as you can, and eventually people will come to believe them. And so one of the first things I wanted to talk about during his video was he talked about cutting taxes on the rich so that they would go out and create jobs. Well, this is demonstrably untrue because we've had Bush tax cuts for 10 years now, historically the lowest tax rates in living memory. And where are the jobs? Nowhere to be seen. And if we take a look at the corporate situation, corporations, big business in America, last year record profits, nearly $2 trillion. And speaking of $2 trillion, they're sitting on more than $2 trillion in corporate bank accounts and not creating jobs. And when we ask them why, they say they're because of the uncertain economic future. Earth to big business. The future is uncertain. There is going to be change. That's a fact of life. And change is unpredictable. Things are going to be uncertain. If there was guarantees built into this economic system, then we'd all know which company stock to sell, which company stock to buy, and we'd be able to retire and not have to work. So that's not going to happen. This whole argument that uncertainty is why we're not creating jobs is just a red herring. But it does lead us to ask what would create jobs? And the answer to that is increased demand. More demand for products and goods and services, and that leads to companies needing to hire. What does it take for more demand? It takes more money to spend. And oh dear, in the last 40 years, wages in this country have been stagnant, and in the last 10 years, they've actually gone down. And during these recent years, while wages were declining, food and gas prices and healthcare costs were all rising. And so there's less income available, less money available to buy goods and services and thereby raise demand. Now, this is kind of what we would expect with all the globalization that's been happening in the last 20 years. Because the main goal of globalization is to get parity in wages across the globe, and that means that the countries where wages are low, those wages are going to rise. We're seeing that in China and Thailand and Mexico already. And countries where wages are high, like in America, those wages have to come down, and that is what we've been seeing. So we're getting exactly what we would expect, given that globalization was really just a search for the lowest cost labor pool. But outsourcing is not the number one cause of the of losing millions of jobs in the last 10 years. The number one cause of losing jobs is robots, computers, and technology. And so robots and computers have made us more productive with fewer man hours, and that means fewer people needing to work. Our increased connectivity and communications mean that people are still working 24/7, on call, making conference calls and business calls all around the world, but at all times of the day and night, and often not even on the clock. And if we look at our food system, look at the local grocery store with self-checkout lanes now, that takes away jobs from clerks and salespeople. And the industrial farming system gets by with fewer than 1% of the workforce when it used to take 15 and 20% of the workers to grow and harvest and transport our food. And now with industrial farming technology, it's done with a fraction of the jobs that it was 40 years ago. When we do open new factories, new manufacturing plants these days, Nobody opens a manufacturing plant with 3,000 assembly line workers. They open a factory with a couple dozen control workers that sit in a room and monitor the computers and the readouts, and the thousands of machines and robots actually do the work, and they're working 24/7 and don't need health care and vacations. Obviously, a good thing for business if profit is your focus. And then the last thing I'm going to point to in terms of technology, and this is one that's on the horizon, hasn't even started to bite us yet, but it's coming soon, and that's the driverless cars. Google's gotten licenses now to start to test driverless cars on the roads. And a good portion of our workforce is drivers, whether it be trucks or taxis or all kinds of shuttles, all kinds of people, delivery trucks, all kinds of trucks being driven around may become driverless pretty soon, and those are jobs that we will lose. And all of these jobs we lose to technology and computers are not coming back. So I think the bottom line on this particular aspect that I wanted to talk about today is that we have the resources we need for everyone, but not if we insist on perpetual and unsustainable growth and consumption, which would also require increasing amounts of money to fund it, because we're just not seeing any way in this economy to grow the money supply, and that's what we would need to be able to grow consumption. The second thing I wanted to talk about from Joe's video was the statement he makes where he says, I work hard, I take care of myself, and I'm entitled to keep what's mine. Really, Joe? So when you were 6 years old and going to elementary school, you were working a part-time job so that you could pay for your education? I don't think so. And now that you're grown up and you have a business, don't you need workers that have been educated and gone to school and know how to read and write? Did you pay for all that education? No, I don't think so. And you've got your business, you need roads for the workers to get to work and for materials to come in for your business so that you can make things, and then roads for shipping of your goods and other transportation systems for getting products and to your customers. And did you pay for all those roads? No, probably not. And within your business, you need legal protection, somebody to enforce the contracts that you enter into and protect your intellectual property. Are you paying for the court systems? No, I didn't think so. And what about the military that's protecting corporate access to resources overseas? Are you paying for that? No, not at all. And you're turning a blind eye to all the slavery that's going on in the world, including the timber and ore industries in South America, gas and oil industries in Southeast Asia, the coffee industry in Central America and Africa, just to name a few. There's more slaves today than ever in history, and so you're benefiting from that. You're turning a blind eye to the supply chains that are using slave labor to bring you materials and goods and services for cheap. And you're also on the personal side, away from business, sweatshops that make your clothes and electronics in many countries, you're definitely not paying full price, fair price for those things that you're buying. You're also letting others pay for the medical treatments that come about because of respiratory problems from people burning oil and coal for transportation and power. You're also not paying for the acid rain damage and the chemical pollution of rivers and oceans, also from burning and toxic chemical releases. You're not paying for the farm workers who are poisoned by the herbicides and pesticides that are being used in modern agriculture, and the back-breaking labor that they put in and they just can't do for their entire life, and they get tossed aside when they can't bend over anymore. And all of this is in order to maximize profit, which is the inhumane goal of capitalism today. And then just one more note, you benefit from the inheritance of assets from generations of ancestors that were allowed to own land and property because you were lucky enough to be born white in a country that used force to appropriate most of the land from its native peoples. And that prevented people of color from property ownership until only a few generations ago. And you have inherited property and assets that help you in this financial system that many people in this country don't have access to. And when you want to loan, you benefit from the lowest rates for borrowing, again, because you're one of the global elite by virtue of being born white in America, not by your own work. So, Joe, the bottom line here is you think you're making money and saving the world, you're wrong. And if this mindset is allowed to dominate our society and our economy, we will all be dead